the beginning of the greatest political comeback in American history.
From every corner of the nation, a spark ignited.
This is going to be the end of spectator politics.
A generation awakened, not with rage, but with resolve, anchored in truth, rooted in tradition, driven by something deeper.
For all of you on campuses that continue to fight for conservative causes, that were smeared, that were slandered, it was as if there was no immediate hope, but you guys had faith.
Then 2024 became our moment. More conservative, more grounded, more determined than any generation in decades.
Young people have gone from being the most progressive generation to becoming potentially the most conservative.
Younger voters wanted a better future. They wanted to be able to own a home. They wanted to be able to have a family. They did not want this woke insanity. These are the freedom fighters of America.
All right, so that's a Turning Point USA conference. In the audience there, you can't really see it, is a bunch of college students, a bunch of Generation Z voters. And to talk about Generation Z and the economy and what's going on, I wanted to bring you on, Ed, because you're my Generation Z voice. You're the person who's been translating it for me on television.
I speak for the entire generation.
You do. Ed Elson, you do the Prof G podcast. Thanks for helping me understand this, because what we've been witnessing is a rightward shift among young voters, among Generation Z, and it's not usually the case. Usually the young voters are the liberal ones, the democratic ones, the idealistic ones, but that's been changing. They're moving to the right. Why is that?
I think it's probably two things. I think the first thing is Republicans seem to be taking these new platforms more seriously. I think that's a big piece of it. And what I have found is that if you want to connect with Gen Z, you need to meet us where we are. And the reality is we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, and we're on YouTube. So that's a very, very simple point. But I think that a lot of people, only until really recently, started taking that a little bit more seriously. We could also throw podcasts into that bucket as well. And it felt as though this shift had been happening, and a lot of more right-leaning voices were putting themselves out there on these platforms. And only really until Trump got elected, I feel like, did the world wake up and say, oh my gosh, there's a whole world out there. There's a whole different media ecosystem out there. And I think that's a big reason as to why I think the people that you're alluding to got very popular. So that's the first piece I would say. The second piece I would say is that a lot of these people simply recognized that young people are upset. And I don't think they said anything that groundbreaking. I don't think these people offered real solutions to the problems of young people. I think of the Andrew Tates of the world, whose solutions to the ailments of young men was to buy a Lamborghini and start trading crypto and get into drop shipping. I mean, these are literally the things that these types of people have suggested.
And also try to dominate women.
And that's a piece of it too.
Yeah.
But at the very least, there was a recognition that young people, and in particular young men, are struggling. And the fact that they at least did that, I think, was a big piece of that rightward shift that you saw with young
14-point margin for young men going toward Donald Trump in the last election.
Yeah.
So it's young women too, but really young men moved toward Donald Trump. What is it about the experience of being a young man right now that made them feel more at home with Donald Trump and with that sort of politics?
Well, I think there's an element of masculinity and bro culture that is just part and parcel of that guy. I think a lot of young men were probably attracted to that. And that's sort of the more surface level answer, I would say. But I think the more meaningful answer is the recognition of various struggles for young people, especially the economic struggles, which I don't think these right-leaning voices really voiced that well. But I think a lot of their messaging is about grievance. And the reality is, you look at the economic situation of young people today, and it's not just young men, to be honest, it's young women too. Young people as a whole are struggling. And we can see that reflected in the cost of college. We can see that reflected in the cost of housing. We can see that reflected in the fact that a third of us still live with our parents. I mean, if your situation isn't going that well, and then someone comes in there and says, I agree, this is all messed up, then that's a good place to start.
So is it Donald Trump and the Republicans that are saying, don't worry, I can fix this for you? There's a reason that this is happening to you, and it's because the left doesn't want to help you, and they're not there for you, and we're going to come in, and we're going to make sure that you can get that job, and you can pay those bills, and you can get ahead.
That's
it's
right.
the progressivism.
That's right. It's a recognition on the side of the right saying your situation doesn't work for you. And that's it. There's no actual solution. If you look at the solutions that are proposed, they're actually going to make them a lot worse. And that is what I've been trying to sort of get the word out, at least on my podcast. The economic proposals, they did the right thing in recognizing the problems of young people, saying this system doesn't work for you, you're being screwed. I hope I can say that. What they did not do is offer a solution that makes any sense. And this is the real problem that I think for young people is I think young people are about to find out that they got duped and they're about to get hit by a ton of bricks.
When you talk to younger people, they'll tell you, and not older people as well, but there is a strain of this, that they want to blow the whole system up.
Yeah.
You know, like in the end of Fight Club, blow up all the credit card companies. And if you blow the system up, it might be some pain in the short term, but in the long term, it'll be better.
Yes.
Why is there that desire?
Well, the first thing I would say to the people who say that, I've yet to see you try. I mean, maybe you post an Instagram story and say, I'm going to blow the system up, but we haven't actually seen real action from young people.
Well, that's part of why people voted for Donald Trump, because he was going to take a hammer to everything. It was the enthusiasm for Elon Musk and Doge coming in and slashing and burning the federal government, because what good has the federal government done for anybody?
Yes, but it was a handful of people. Again, you got to look at the overall turnout among my generation. It was a handful of people who, yeah, they put their votes in. They said, we want to go with Trump. We want to break the system that doesn't work for us, and fair enough to them. I guess my point would be to the 60% of us who didn't show up, who were silent in that election. But I think, to your point, there's a lot that people want to break up, and I would expect and I would hope that in the midterms and also in the next presidential election, we'll see a lot more turnout because of what this administration is doing to young people. And the biggest and most scary part of this is the big, beautiful bill, which we've talked about on your show before. That is probably the most egregious offense to young people.
Tell me why.
The notion of exploding the national debt by $4 trillion when we're already servicing our debt to the tune of $900 billion a year, and we're going to double that by 2034 to $1.8 trillion. This is all a system of swiping a credit card so that we can subsidize the lives of old rich people who want to live the American dream, who are not going to get the check. After they're dead, by the way, the check is going to be picked up by young people because, again, you just need to think about those interest payments. This is what I always try to tell people. The second largest federal expenditure today is servicing the debt. It's interest payments. And we're going to balloon that by spending this much more, by increasing the deficit spending by this amount, to the point where in 10, 15, 20 years, we're not going to have enough money to spend on all the stuff that we actually want.
What is that conversation like when you're talking to your friends? You're 26 and you say, guys, you need to get concerned about this because the debt is out of control and we're servicing the debt too much. The interest payments are too high. Are you having these conversations in your regular life, and are they listening?
I think this is the one piece where I think the Democratic Party actually has a real opportunity. I think young people understand this concept. Yeah. Maybe a couple of years ago they didn't because it was boring or uninteresting. Maybe we've just gotten older. Maybe we've just gotten a little bit more mature. But I actually think this is an issue that young people can grasp if we really communicate it very clearly. I mean, if we keep saying the words deficit and debt, that can get a little bit boring. But what is happening is very obvious. We are getting the check for old people, and we're going to get the check once they're dead. It's completely unfair. And so I think, actually, a lot of people kind of get this, and especially people who voted for Trump, who ran on this campaign of a balanced budget. That was what he said in his address to Congress, and everyone stood up, raucous applause. It was the loudest applause of the night when he said, we're going to balance the budget. And then suddenly this big, beautiful bill comes out, and it's doing the total opposite.
So if you're advising a Democratic politician on how to speak to young people and how to get them more engaged in Democratic politics, do you say they've got to run on tax hikes? Is it a Bernie Sanders-style campaign where you say, I'm going to tax the billionaires? There shouldn't be a billionaire class. There should be more equity. Is it a Democratic socialist campaign? Is it what Zoran Mamdani is doing?
I think those messages are on the right track. I don't think they're exactly correct. I have my issues with them. But they're on the right track because they're talking about money, and they're talking about real issues. This business of billionaires is very real. I mean, there are more than 900 billionaires in the US today. It's up 800%.
900 billion billionaires.
900 billionaires. Sorry,
Oh, 900
billionaires, up 800%.
Got it.
Since 1990. The number of billionaires has exploded. I think there are 2,000 in the world now. So the billionaire problem is a real problem. Does that mean that that is necessarily the answer to go the Mamdani route? I have my skepticism. However, he is doing something new, which is talking about the economic problems. And one thing that has always frustrated me, and especially frustrates me today, is this notion that I always hear of, I'm socially liberal and I'm fiscally conservative. I like what the Democrats are doing in terms of social issues. I really like that. But, you know, it's the Republicans who are the ones who are responsible when it comes to the economics, when it comes to handling money. They know what they're doing. If you look at the history of the US, the Republicans are more fiscally irresponsible than the Democrats. They've ran up consistently. Each Republican administration, there's an average of 2.5% of GDP in deficits. The Democrats, it's less than 2%. And we're seeing this exaggerated now with this big, beautiful bill.
So why do Republicans get away with it?
Because that's in their messaging. And they just say it. They say,
can just
we
lie
are the
about
party. We're watching pure, flat-out lies from this administration. And I think this is a real opportunity because the lies have been so obvious. They're so clear this time. But that is what's happening. It is a lie. It is a lie that this is the fiscally responsible party. And I think the Democrats should focus more. We are actually a party that is responsible when it comes to fiscal issues, when it comes to economic issues. We understand money, and that over there is a party that is going to blow up the deficit.
So I know we've talked a little bit about Mamdani, and you're skeptical of some of his proposals, but is there another Democratic politician that's speaking to voters like you, speaking to your generation, speaking to more broadly to the American public on these issues and doing it clearly?
There are very few. I think that politicians are seeing what happened with Mamdani, and I think that's going to get their act together in a lot of ways.
Do they have the ability to do it? I mean, he's a singular talent right now. He's incredible at engaging with people and communicating.
He is an incredible talent. And look, politics is hard. You need to have the right ideas, you need to be good at governing, and then you also need to be incredibly compelling as a speaker. You need to understand the nuances of media. You need to understand where to invest in when it comes to your campaigning and where not to invest in. These are very difficult things. So I don't necessarily blame Democrats, but the reality is their messages aren't really working. So I think in terms of the politicians whose messages are resonating for young people on the left, I would say Mamdani, it was an incredible what we saw in New York. I would say Bernie Sanders as well, and I would say AOC. Those are the ones whose messages are resonating for my generation, and that is on the left. Over on the right, you've got a whole handful of commentators and media personalities who our generation have become quite drawn to. I think they're going to realize this is all a bit of a lie.
What's interesting is that the ones that are appealing on the right and the ones that are appealing on the left, they both are talking about economic issues, but they are vastly different on cultural issues. Vastly different on cultural issues. Is there room? Is that leaving some people behind? Is the cultural aspect of, nothing can be politically correct, and I'm going to go after every sacred cow the liberals want to hold dear, and the liberals saying you can't say this and you can't say that, and you have to be more respectful. I'm broadly generalizing the way the language is going. Is that leaving some folks behind? Is there a moderate middle in terms of cultural issues?
Well, I'd love to see a poll on that question. I don't know. But what I could tell you is that's certainly the way I feel, and it's certainly the way I think a lot of people I interact with on a daily basis.
Explain that more.
Well, I think the wokeness stuff went too far. I think a lot of people could agree with that. And I think what we saw was this giant anti-woke movement, which is also going way too far. And I think there are a lot of us who recognize, okay, that side went a little bit too far, and that side went a little bit too far. And what I'm finding, and what I think a lot of people are finding, is we're a little bit sick of all of this cultural battle. I mean, we're not that interested, and actually a lot of it doesn't matter that much. This anti-woke stuff has gotten so beyond levels of insane. They've become so obsessed with these issues to the point where they're completely distracted by the things that actually matter. I could say that about the left, though I honestly think the woke stuff has largely died. I think what people want to do now is they're tired of the cultural stuff. They're tired of bickering about identity politics. And I think they want to get to the real issues, which is why I'm more interested in let's focus on the money issues. Let's focus on the economic issues. And it's very clear what is happening. This administration has got it way out of control when it comes to that.
I want to play a soundbite. This is Andrew Schultz, who very publicly supported Donald Trump, breaking from Donald Trump over the last recently, and looking toward Mamdani and saying that's actually more the kind of politician that I like. Let me play it.
The only party right now that to me seems America first is the Democrat Socialist Party.
Yep.
Bernie is America first. Mamdani and all his ideas that he will not be able to execute, and I frankly think many of them are not good ideas, even if they do execute. I frankly think I disagree with them. But he is no doubt New York first. Who knows if he can actually do these things for New York, but the policies seem to want to help people here. That's what I care about. And if MAGA wants to take this America First thing back, they got to start looking out for America. And it doesn't seem like they're doing. Lying to Americans is not America First.
How much do folks like that matter?
I think it matters a lot, but I think what that shows us is that Andrew Schultz spends a lot of time on Instagram. I actually don't think it says that much more than that. You heard him say, I don't necessarily agree with the policies, but I think he's being spoken to by a guy who figured out how to get through to people. And that is why Mamdani is so important, is because it's kind of the first time where my generation actually showed up for themselves and decided, yeah, we really care about this. And so to me, that is indicative of this is a guy who figured out the messaging and also figured out how to get through to young people.
My colleague Ari Melber had a breakdown of Mamdani's agenda, and I think this is interesting, versus what he's going to bring in, what it will cost versus what revenue he wants to bring in through taxes. I can put it up on the screen, and you'll see that affordable housing, free childcare, free buses, city-owned grocery stores. I mean, it's $70 billion, $5 to $8 billion, $700 million per year, $60 million, a lot of money. And then the tax revenue, the 2% tax on millionaires and the 11.5% corporate tax would bring in a total of about $9 billion a year, which doesn't come close to paying for even the affordable housing side of this, which is $70 billion alone. He's running on a platform of trying to make New York more affordable and better for people. And I think that is important because it is difficult to live in this city financially. It's like $5,000 median rent right now, or average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan.
Yeah.
How much of it does he actually need to get done for voters to regain their trust in the Democratic Party? I mean, is he going to be held accountable to these are the policies he's proposed?
Yeah.
Does he actually have to get these things done?
Well, we'll see. I would argue, yes, you gotta get things done. I think that's important to me as a voter. But figuring out whether he is going to get his policy proposals done right now, to me, that's a conversation that's worth having further down the road. To me, the thing that we are learning about him is that the issues that he addressed are the ones that people care about. And when you have a conversation with someone, you say, yeah, well, I'm not sure that it'll actually work. They say, well, at least he's recognizing the problem. And that's what happened here. Here we had a guy who recognized the problem. He wasn't talking about race and gender. He was talking about why is it that you're paying $5,000 for a one-bedroom apartment, which you didn't mention, a one-bedroom apartment that is basically a shoebox. The apartments in New York are insane. Why is that? Why is it that 19 households in America control 2% of all household wealth, while the bottom 50% controls 3%? I mean, just think about that. You've got 19 households that have 2% of all of the wealth in America, and then you've got 65 million households that control 3%. That's an insane disparity. And that's the problem, and that's what people want to hear about. And here we have a guy who recognized the problems. Do I think that a city-owned grocery store is going to fix that problem? I don't think that's going to fix the problem. We can get into why, but to be honest, I think that it's a little bit of a distraction from what we really need to be talking about right now, which is why the messaging worked. So we'll see. I hope it works. I hope that his ideas work, and I'm certainly not rooting on him to fail. I don't think they will, many of those ideas, but at least he's recognizing the issue and saying, I care about this, and voicing it, which is something that a lot of politicians aren't doing, especially on the left.
I do think it's interesting. And the message I'm hearing from you is if you want to reach out to voters who have left the Democratic Party, you've got to talk about affordability. You've got to talk about making life fairer for most people. And you've also got to meet people where they are engaging with content, which is online.
That's a big piece of it. I mean, the stat that I always tell people about Gen Z, we spend 109 days of the calendar year looking at our phones. We spend 106 days asleep. So that's 150 days left over to do everything else.
Do you go out? Do you party? Do you go to bars?
I would encourage people to do more of it. I'm certainly trying, but this thing's addictive.
I was asking people on my team, and they were saying, we can't go to a bar. The drinks cost $10, $12, $15, even for
That's a big piece of it, too.
Beer now.
Yeah, might as well have a virtual beer, yeah.
No, that doesn't sound fun at all. Ed Elson, it's really good to have you. Thank you for being my translator to the younger generation. I swear a second ago, I was young, and then all of a sudden I left. Ed, good to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in.